Hello, I am Tony Torralba from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. In this presentation, which will consist of three parts, I will propose that examining the daily work of scientists might be productive for the design of authentic teaching and learning environments in the schools. I will offer a conceptual framework for guiding such effort and will illustrate how such framework has been applied in different school settings. Before I do that, I will state the reasons why we want to look at the daily work of scientists to inform science teaching and learning in schools. We have known for some time that students at best are not gaining a good conceptual understanding of scientific concepts and processes in the way science is offered to them. And at worst, they are disengaging with versions of science offered to them in the schools. We also know that teachers, especially at the elementary school level, do not seem to have a deep understanding of science necessary for engaging students in the inquiry processes so central to science. Leading science agencies and researchers in the US and Europe have been advocating learning and teaching of science in schools in ways that are better aligned with how science is actually conducted in the world by scientists. These efforts to bring more authentic images of science in classrooms can be viewed as a shift or a movement from normative to contextualized versions of science. Much of those efforts have taken the form of project-based curriculum. While those curriculum efforts have produced interesting descriptions of learning and development for researchers, and certainly have appealed much more to students and teachers inside classrooms, there's still a problem in trying to contextualize the subject matter with little or no knowledge of the mature disciplinary practice. In short, we know little of how scientists or professionals do their everyday work. For instance, how they use mathematics to solve the everyday problems of their professions. What we know, for example, in biology, have relied on images of expertise that are not empirically grounded. Those images have been produced from experimental or clinical studies where context has been ignored or deleted, or they come from textbooks, or from accounts of the structure of knowledge drawn from the history and philosophy of the discipline. In fact, we have mistakenly assumed, as Levi-Brown did 100 years ago, that mature disciplinary knowledge was sufficiently well understood to be used as a firm base from which to assess the emerging knowledge of novices. There is a long history associated with this problem. Sylvia Scribner reminds us of the theoretical origins of this problem, namely the detrimental influence of mentalistic models on the study of human action. Laura Resnick and others told us about the consequences of this model in school settings. To a large degree, those concerns led to curriculum initiatives known as project-based curriculum. This was an attempt to contextualize knowledge into extended projects that resembled a bit more how the subject matter existed in the world. All those efforts made an assumption, and that is that learning results in the ability of people to do something within that discipline, or at least to use the disciplinary skills for productive activity. The realization that was not taking place inside the schools was what became known as the encapsulation of school learning. So, what are the alternatives? One is to gather empirical imagery of scientific practice from the everyday work of scientists, but gather such imagery from an educational perspective. How can we study the everyday work of scientists? Well, research done by sociologists and anthropologists of science can help us here. These folks have focused and placed particular attention to the role of material, representational, and interactional resources for doing scientific work and constructing scientific claims. While this work has really opened up our notions of what everyday scientific practice entails, their purpose has not been on processes of learning, teaching, and development. And of course, those are our concerns. I have borrowed from their research to go to one place that I would call the bug house with an educational eye, if you may. And that's what I would present in this slideshow. Let me define what I mean by empirical images of science. First, an image that is empirical shows how the work is getting done as we observe it. For instance, if we were interested in how this particular activity was done, we will be able to obtain raw data from this image. And this, in other words, it is empirical in the sense that we have direct access to the phenomena of interest. It is not a second-hand retrospective or summative account of scientific practice. It contains all the details of the work as it gets done on the everyday basis. I will define learning environments as complex social, technological settings where people are engaged with each other for the purpose of accomplishing a task with mediating resources. Learning environments defined as such exist in schools, of course, and outside of schools. Examining a particular practice empirically within learning environments as just defined implies that we try to better understand the contextual aspects of human cognition and development. That is, how humans learn and develop within the everyday environments where they find themselves doing what they do. In this respect, I follow on the steps of and have been influenced by the work of Jean Leif, Sylvia Scribner, Ed Hutchins, Jeffrey Sachs, and others who were paying attention at how learning and development took place outside of schools and within the context of doing and everyday activities such as shopping, milk delivering, selling candy in the streets, or navigating a Navy ship. These researchers and I have been concerned about the validity of claims emerging from traditional experimental psychology and cognitive research in relation to how children and adults learn and develop in their everyday lives. Unlike those researchers, I anchor my concerns within academic disciplines with trajectories that span school and work. Trying to better understand, for example, how mathematics is used within the everyday work of experts such as biologists, cartographers, architects, and engineers, and how such mathematical practices could inform the everyday learning and teaching in the schools.